So, Rocky Rockstraw, welcome. And one of the things I really wanted to talk with you about was first what you wrote in your bio in Narrative Mindworks, because it really dovetails nicely with a conversation that we had a couple weeks ago on empathy. Can it be taught? And it spurred some thoughts about different ways that we might want to approach this topic in the future. And I thought of you um, and the idea of what is empathy for students? How important is that? And you wrote in your bio, and I'm quoting here, patients and students want to know how much you care before they care about how much you know. So what do you think about this idea of empathy for learners? And how do
Um,
you show it? How do you do it?
it's a pleasure, Tony. It's great to see you again. It's always great to reconnect. I guess like a bad penny, maybe we keep turning up or what have you. I actually think it's more like-minded folks are drawn to the natural places. Um, so empathy and instruction, I think it's in, let me back up. That statement, patients don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Um, I remember distinctly hearing that for the first time, and I don't have the best memory, so things like that do stick out. It was in 1986. I was in my mental health clinical training with a faculty, a nursing faculty, and she said that, and she um, was trying to help us to, I think, navigate learning skills and demonstrating a caring or what you could call an empathetic approach. And that stuck with me forever. I think about it a lot. I think about that was in 86, and till about 2001 or so, I was at the bedside and practiced empathy, practiced working with the patients. And at that time, I think part of it was just being with the patients. Hey, Rocky, I see you, patient. Hey, Rocky, am I going to die today? How do you respond to that? And I think just acknowledging, you know what? I don't know, but I can promise you that I'll be with you the entire day today. I can tell you how your vital signs are trending in a positive nature and things are getting better. I'll let you know when there's concerns and what's going on, and we can incorporate family members. So I think it's just pausing sometimes to acknowledge what's said, what's not said, and just people in general.
And you
Um,
said two interesting things. I don't know, which is honest. And also, but I'll be here for you. I'm here. Yeah, those are two really important statements, I think.
I've not thought much about that. What comes to mind just this moment is being alone or loneliness, and I just wonder. I've always been on the outside of the side rails when I'm caring for patients. You take a patient, admit them into the hospital, they're ripped away from their family, their support, everything that they know, love, and need, and it becomes very clinical, very sterile. So again, I don't think I would be a very good patient. I'm not sure about following the rules, but I think when you at least let people know what's going on, um, I think it helps immensely, whether it's the patient, whether it's their family members. And I learned a long time ago that in healthcare, we don't heal; we just buy them time so that the body can heal itself. And I know that's kind of a play on words or what have you. Um, but fast forwarding, if I can, into teaching. I've read books. I've thought about how do you engage the students? How do you get the students engaged? And I've struggled with that in the classroom as well as online. And I would say part of it stems from that feeling of students want to know how much you care. And how do you, as an instructor, show 50 students that walk into your classroom that you care? Um, uh, a few examples. I'm always a half hour early to the classroom. I'm never just showing up at the time that class starts. I play music. To me, I think music is transformational. And I
You
always
play
play
music in the classroom? So
music
you
in the
show up and
classroom.
then, huh.
Yeah, as they're coming in, I play it rather loud, and there's a couple reasons for that. Oh my goodness, about 25 years ago, Tony, I crossed over to the dark side, and I love country now. So I get to play country on the first day of class. Um, I do take a survey, have electronic software called Mentimeter. I take surveys and I let the students choose what music they want for the remainder of the classes, the highest vote week 2, week 3, and week 4. Um, I also stand outside the classroom and welcome and shake students' hands as they come in. Again, kind of corny, and I try to do that every class. And I tell students, and I teach both nursing students and health science students, that again, it's important to network. It's important to get to know each other and utilize each other's resources and understand that better. And I think that begins to help the students think a little beyond of what I'm here to do. And what are those non-tangible, I'm not sure if that's the right word, that helps make relationships, both professional and personal. So I don't know if that begins to answer your question, but that's a few things that I do. Um, and in full transparency, the reason I also play loud music is during break, I turn it back on so that I get a break while the students have a break, so they don't come up to me and try to talk to me. Not that I don't want to talk with them, but after teaching for 50 minutes straight, a break sometimes helps. And the students seem to appreciate it. They like voting, and I've had them vote from anything from Latin to Christmas music to folk music, and I let them know what the results are. Just letting them know that it's kind of a partnership.
So I'm fascinated by this. So you play music of your choice when they enter the room, and um, and you do that. Why specifically? Is that for your benefit and their benefit? And if so, what are the benefits of doing that?
I initially did it because I was trying to find something to connect. As I've aged, I began to live those generational changes. I remember being young thinking, oh my goodness, well, how could I ever connect with? So I think music helps connect us at different levels.
Hmm.
And and I think we all have different genres of music that we are drawn to. But over a 15-week period, if I'm playing 15 different genres, I think it shows the cultural divide of different choices, of different desires, and different cultures as well. I've only twice, and I've been doing this probably 10, 12 years or so. Twice I've had students in my evaluation say they thought it was unique and they had never heard of some type of music. So of hearing the different things. Now, I also show my age because sometimes when I play certain genres and they use curse words, which are very acceptable today, um, I get a little uncomfortable. And I tell my students there are a few words that I don't want to say I'll allow, but when it says certain things, when it refers to certain body parts, it's just makes me uncomfortable. I'll change the music and I'll share with them how important it is to ensure that everybody in the room is comfortable with what's being said. So although I might be comfortable with a certain music, if I find someone else isn't, again, think that's beginning to display empathy and understanding for others and respect.
I
Did
think
I
it's
answer that question?
Yeah, no, you do. I think it's so interesting, this idea of students choosing the music that they want to hear as a kind of a I'm sorry, a cultural humility exercise, because you're
Sure.
learning what they value, and they learn what each other value through music. That's a really unique way. I've never heard that before. Huh. Without putting up a lesson or a PowerPoint on cultural humility and the need for it. You're really practicing it in a really interesting way through music. Huh.
And there's that connection
You're saying a
that
connection. Yes, please.
and the classroom is less sterile.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's chairs, yeah, there's tables, but sometimes that music, I mean, think about when you walk into a restaurant or some other type of entertainment place. The type of music can excite you, can relax you, can bore you. Um, but it helps connect on different levels that I had not thought about before. I thought I'd give it a try. Didn't know if it was going to go over, and it's kind of fun.
So they get to choose the music that ends the class?
No, no. So I play music, as the class starts, during break, and at the end to denote the class is over. So, for instance, the first class I play country throughout the whole class. I mean, at the beginning, during break, and at the end. Then I send out a survey, and I let them know in class that I'll be doing that. And then for the second class, starting, break, and ending, whatever gets the most votes, and I will type in like 15 different genres, and then I also put an other in there because there's like over 90 some different genres depending on what you Google, and I'm surprised. Quite a few times, country gets selected a second time with the number of votes. So I'm a little biased, and I kind of allow that to happen.
Yeah, that's such an interesting approach to learning about them learning about each other, connecting with them, and also, I guess, changing the channel in some ways, going from one class to another. Uh, it's almost like an induction process. When they walk into the room, suddenly they're into a different space, a different environment, a different teacher, perhaps with a different attitude as well about teaching. I'm also really interested in how empathy works, for example, when debriefing students or giving them feedback about their work. What are your approaches to doing this?
That's I think one way to approach it is with humility, and what I mean by that is I profess that I want to know when I'm doing things well, and I want constructive feedback. But boy, sometimes when I receive constructive feedback, it's a little brutal. Um, so I've practiced over time how to give positive constructive feedback. Um, I actually share with students. I'll never forget my very first evaluation. I taught a class of 50 accelerated students. I had 3 hours, and I had over 110 PowerPoints, and it was on fundamentals, and it was all text heavy. I was new. I wanted to excel. I failed miserably. And in my evaluations, my boss at the time called me in. I was actually out at a university there in Philadelphia. My boss called me in, sat me down, and wanted to share my evaluations with me. And one key word that was time and time and time again is that I sucked as an instructor. And I think my boss was afraid that I would have taken it really heavily. And she let me read, and she says, "What do you think?" I says, "Well, a lot of it's targeted. A lot of it is correct in hindsight. I talked to my mentor afterwards, and we changed things. But yeah, a lot of it's actual." And she goes, "Well, what do you think about all the terminology?" I said, "Well, it's a little rough that they say I sucked, and I appreciate that. But rather than just saying I sucked, I wish they would have told me how I could suck less. Tell me what I could do differently that they didn't necessarily like about it or what have you." And from that point forward, I thought about how can someone tell me in a positive way that I suck, or I could use an improvement. And I think that just goes from in debriefing. Sometimes they talk about an Oreo or a sandwich where you say something good, you say something bad, um, and then say something good. And I think there's something about that with feedback. I think when you're looking, let's say for a paper that I'm grading, I think I'm real quick to say this needs improvement, this needs improvement, this needs improvement. I have to stop and say, wait a sec. Let's start with, hey, this was a great introduction. I really liked how you put together this paragraph, so that they can get both reinforce what I want them to continue to do and improve areas that they may need to improve as well. And I've, these last few years, it's like anything else. I have to practice it before I get comfortable, and it becomes kind of a more of a habit. But I have students that say, I have a positive way to give feedback and criticism. And they sense that in my my feedback to them, whether it's in person or even in writing on their papers or what have you.
Yeah, I think that many people, instructors, give feedback, they jump right to the solution and they don't bother finding out what was in your mind. What were you thinking when you did this? And I don't and it's not like what were you thinking, but approaching the learner with genuine curiosity. Here's some feedback. I saw what you did. I'm really interested in why you chose that. And I think a good debriefer is also prepared to change their mind. You know, maybe the student will say something that really makes sense. So you have to be kind of open to the student. But it's so important, as you're saying, to approach this in a positive way. And I think it's so important to find out what the thinking is, because that's what they need to work on, the thinking process. It's and then coach as appropriate, rather than
Right.
jump right to the solution. Let's do a little work. Let me learn about it.
Point out, I'm sorry, could I point out, you said something that I'd like to draw out because this is something I learned. So I've been in simulation, gosh, for 20 some years. Um, and there's always been what part of simulation is most important. Well, it's all important with learning and improving oneself. But again, in debriefing, you said something about wanting to get to the understanding or to the core. Why did you do what you did? And if we can begin to understand why someone did something, we can provide them a knowledge that may be lacking, feedback that they might need, or what have you. And I learned, you may have heard of a debriefing with good judgment out of
Yeah. Jenny
Harvard
Rudolph.
simulation.
Okay. Yep.
And
Absolutely.
again, what I like about that, if you don't know why someone makes a choice, how do you provide them feedback? Um, and so I've just found in my conversations, like you just mentioned, to get at the core of where the student's going, what's going on. And also, I think the humility is also giving some graciousness and some extend certain I'm not sure the right word, favors or what have you. Papers are due at a certain time. Student says, geez, I remember early on, 1 minute late, mark it down. What was that all about, Rocky? I mean, get over yourself. You know, um, if it was submitted 1 or 2 minutes late, hey, at least they were working hard to get it done, and give them some grace period. I've had students, email me the day before, sometimes the day after. I've really been struggling in other classes. I think we all know what it's like to struggle. I tell students, you're taking 4 classes and learning about it. I'm teaching 4 different classes. The struggle's real. So I think giving them the benefit of the doubt, and other things I learned a long time ago too, when students are really struggling, I get a paper 5 days late, and according to the my syllabus, that's 50% of the paper. Um, but if you tell the student, you know what, I understand it was late, but to be fair, the syllabus says 10 points per day, 10% per day. Let's cut the average in half. Let's just make it 25%. They are floored by that. They're very excited about it. But I think it's also teaching them how to be empathetic to others as well. And I got to back up that 10% per day. I think it's more like 5% per day. It's not that hard. But so I think there's different things that you can do when you're giving feedback, when you're discussing, negotiating, for lack of better words, because there's only 1 or 2 things I think in healthcare that's got to be a rocket science. That's like brain surgery, maybe general surgery, but there's got to be give and take when we're dealing with human beings, I think.
Well, you're doing two things in your approach. One is validating their feelings. I understand that you're feeling overwhelmed right now, and so am I. I really relate to that. But you're also holding them to a standard that's negotiable.
Yeah.
And I wonder if, depending upon the student's attitude, how that negotiation goes. Or what do you think? How, do you do this relationship by relationship, or how does that work?
Um, for me, there's a difference from my performance than
Mhm,
my emotions. My performance, my understanding is no matter who I'm dealing with, I treat them fairly across the board.
mhm.
It may be harder for me emotionally to do that for one student or another, but I see that as an internal issue, not an external to them. I may disagree with some of their practices. I may not understand some of their challenges that they have. And even if they have an attitude, for lack of better words, um, I'm thinking I'm not here. It'd be one thing if the class was Attitude 101, then we could definitely work on it. But um, I think I learned a long time ago, and this was even maybe pre-healthcare, that I'm not responsible for others' actions and others' emotions. And many times when they come to me with an emotion or an attitude, it's something from prior, and either they're comfortable sharing it with me, or they're at such a point, they're kind of spilling over. And I'd much rather, and I tell my clinical students, if you want to get mad at someone, come and get mad at me privately. Don't want to do that with your patients. You don't want to do that with the nurses at the bedside. We're humans. Those are normal emotions. Save it for me. Give them a safe space to blow that off and to learn. And after they do, kind of blow things off, let's talk about strategies. What happened that got you to this point? What can you do to deflect it next time?
So you become a safe container for their feelings, some of which may have to do with the class, some of which may have to do with their dog just died last night or
Sure.
something. You never know. You never know what goes on with students. I'm wondering, Rocky, if this approach of showing empathy to students in the way that you do it also models for them how to be empathic with their patients. We talk a lot about empathy for patients, but I don't know that it can necessarily be taught in a classroom on empathy, for example. And I wonder what your thoughts are about modeling empathy the way that you do. What's your take on that?
Well, my initial rationale for doing this is I believe, and I think back to a theorist, Levinsky, about childhood learning. And there's a zone of proximal development where folks get nervous about learning. So I feel if I can be empathetic and understanding in the classroom, the students quickly become comfortable and feel a safe environment. And in that safe environment, they open up more to learning, more accessible to that learning. It comes easier and they focus more on that rather than the anxious things that may be going up. So it's slightly selfish. I feel like in a more a safe and more calming environment, learning can really take place and they can trust me to get into that zone of proximal development. I do think I do agree with modeling behavior. I don't believe in do as I say, not as I do. Um, so I think to demonstrate that, they not only feel that empathy, they can begin to ask questions and try to model it back. And I've told some students who sometimes struggle with it because they're so focused on a task, they're more on, okay, I got to get your vital signs. I don't have time to talk to you right now. I've never heard that said, but that's kind of an example. And I say, sometimes you have to fake empathy until you make it. I may not be feeling very empathetic right now, but our discussion right now kind of calls for it. And I'm feeling pretty good. I'm very comfortable with the interview. But I think sometimes in an environment, it adds that calming part to whatever might be going on, from a difficult conversation to a very volatile conversation. And even in a code environment, I think there's importance to decrease some of that caustic attitudes and craziness, to calm it down just a little bit so that conversations can happen, effective teamwork and leadership.
Hmm.
That was all over the place. I'm sorry about that.
No, that makes sense. I think you're really referring to the importance of, for example, not being so transparent about your own feelings. You're in a position of teaching, and let's face it, people in healthcare are in vulnerable positions themselves. However, they have to kind of carry on. So
True. Very
not
true.
yeah, not necessarily being so transparent about all the problems that you're going in with, and it becomes a competition of who's in the most pain at this moment, which you don't want with your your students
Sure.
or your patients. So I really appreciate this idea of it's almost like that guy who was it on Saturday Night Live years ago. It's it's better to look good than feel good. Remember that? I can't remember the actor who did that. I thought that he did that as a joke, but I thought that's really true sometimes. Sometimes it's important for our professional work to look better than we feel. We have to put ourselves on hold and
Oh, going,
suppress our
oh,
feelings, not repress them, but suppress
right.
them for the moment so that we can carry on. And they'll have to learn to do that themselves as well, the students.
And that going back to, and I remember vividly at the bedside sometimes when my patients were dying. And I think, although that things were busy, I think displaying that calm or that looking good, as you referred to it, helps them to be a bit more calm in the environment and to be curious about what's going on. You know, if you have someone caring for you that is chaotic and angry and yelling, you kind of wonder what's going on and what am I not seeing? What am I not noticing? Whereas, you know, I've had patients say, you know, am I dying? And I go, again, I don't know. However, over the last 5 hours, you know, your blood pressures are dropping, your heart rate's slowing down. You've elected not to take these different medications would extend your life. So I definitely see some trending of things slowing down. But is it this minute? Is it next week? You know, and there are times when I've actually said to patients, you know, maybe we need to call your son to come here and sit with you for a little while. That might be a good time, excuse me for a minute, a good time to do that. And again, I think they respect you for that. They value, I actually think they expect us to help them notice that and to be kind of in charge of their life and their dying.
Yeah, they need to know what in the most straightforward but empathic and gentlest way
Yes,
possible. What's your status? But you're not going to suffer alone. I will be here.
exactly.
We will be here as your healthcare providers. And to say that explicitly, uh, straight out, I think is really important, and not couch it in medical jargon. Yeah.
And I think the patients value that honest and direct feedback. And how much quicker you build that trust. And I think that trust helps build that and open up them to the empathetic to the empathy and to understanding that again, whatever's going to happen, I'll be here with you. Whatever's going to happen, we'll talk you through it. You know, because hospitals can be a scary place, doctors' offices too.
This may sound like a really off the wall question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How do you want to die? Under what circumstances?
You know, it's funny you say that. The other day, I was in a class. I'm taking Dr. Benner, who's a nursing theorist, has a clinical course that out of California that I'm taking, and one of the instructors gave us a case study where they gave us 25. We had to list 5 things that we value, 5 body parts, 5 uh, family members. And then they would take us through this case study and they say, mark off 3, mark off 2. And at one point, when a diagnosis came out for the case study, I stopped playing. I mean, I got quiet because I know what it meant. I knew potentially if you chose treatment, what it meant. So I just sat and I thought about this. And I've actually spoke to this quite frequently about my husband. We kind of jokingly say when we go, I don't want to be around when he's not around, and he doesn't want to be around when I'm not around. So I don't know if you remember that movie Thelma and Louise.
Yeah.
Um, I don't believe in suicide, but yet I don't disbelieve in it, and I do know what I wouldn't want. So when after this case study exercise, they asked people to talk about what was the hardest to give up. You know, what was your last 2 or 3 things that were left. And when they came to me, I said, well, at this point, I left with 15 choices still there. Well, how'd you do that? And I said, well, I stopped playing. And in my mind, I went to the beach, got on a chair, a pitcher of margaritas, and I'm gonna go, being with people and doing the things that I enjoy. Um, and I don't know, I think part of that empathy in my mind, I've seen what we can do sometimes in healthcare where we remove people from their family, we remove them from the things they love, not purposely, but sometimes all that technology and life-saving devices doesn't promote that family togetherness. So yeah, I've thought about it. I don't have any plans, but I thought about it. And it was funny when I was doing this case study, it was just last Wednesday. Um, I smiled when I heard that, and I said, yeah, this is one of those times I think that I would choose, thanks for the diagnosis, no treatments, please.
Yeah,
Now,
we're
I
getting to that age. Yeah, we're the elders.
would.
If we don't really think about these things on a regular basis, I think that's, I don't know, somewhat problematic. Like the Buddhists talk about, you need to contemplate your death every day in some way, in some non-morbid way, just in order for you to enhance your living, realizing life is limited and enjoy it, get the most out of it while you can. So I think it's interesting and ironic that one way to do this is to contemplate the end
and
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 to
if
plan for it, maybe. Yeah.
right, and if you're comfortable, if you've thought about that and not made choices, but if you've thought about it, whether you think about it daily, as you said, as a Buddhist would consider, but I think you're more apt and more comfortable to listen to others, listen to your patients, answer questions to your patients, and so you've had some time to think about it. So when you do respond to a patient, it's a bit more empathetic, it's a bit more thoughtful, and I've shared with patients. I've had patients who had thought about suicide, and I explained to them, I need to let you know that since you've mentioned that, that's an illegal act in the state that we live in, and I'm required by my license to report it to your doctor. I appreciate you telling me. I support you fully. Um, but right now, we need to have some conversations and working with them with that. But again, I think there's even an empathy to helping people process different things as well. You know, I told you I'd get in a convertible Cadillac and drive it off a cliff. Am I suicidal? Well, I guess the specialist can tell us that or not. It's going to have to be a baby blue, maybe a 1971 Cadillac, and there's not many of those around. But
With country
that's
music playing.
country music. Well, I'm not sure my husband would appreciate that. We would have to negotiate the type of music.
Well, look, Rocky, thanks so much for this conversation. I really appreciate it. And also, I appreciate the history that we've had as colleagues over the course of time in this patient simulation field. So I'm sure we're going to keep talking.
My pleasure, Tony. It was great talking with you, and thanks for letting me share a little bit about my life and my thoughts and ideas on empathy.